It was a night the villagers of Himnes would never forget, a night drenched in fear, fire, and violence. The small, peaceful settlement, nestled between rolling hills and dark forests, had known only whispers of the dangers that lurked beyond its borders. Goblin raiders were spoken of in hushed tones, used as cautionary tales to scare children into staying close to home. Few believed such horrors would ever come to their quiet, hard-working village. But that night, the nightmares came alive. The attack began after sunset. The village had settled into its usual rhythm. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys as families gathered around hearths for supper. The air was cool, crisp with the promise of autumn, and the moon cast a silver glow over the fields surrounding the village. All seemed calm, safe, until the shadows began to move. From the tree line bordering the village, the goblin raiders emerged, small, hunched figures with cruel eyes glinting in the darkness. They moved swiftly and silently at first, creeping toward the homes at the village's edge, their breath barely more than a whisper in the night. But the calm did not last long. Soon the silence was shattered by the sound of breaking glass and splintering wood. The goblins attacked with ferocity, pouring into the village like a flood of terror. Their weapons, crudely fashioned clubs, jagged blades, and makeshift spears, were gripped in filthy, clawed hands. They howled and screeched as they descended on Himnes, their laughter harsh and guttural, echoing through the narrow streets. Flames quickly followed, rising from rooftops and windows as torches were thrown into homes. The once peaceful night was transformed into a landscape of flickering fire and chaos. Villagers scrambled out of their homes in a panic, clutching whatever they could. Children, weapons, anything to defend themselves. But they were not warriors. Most were farmers, merchants, and craftspeople, and they were woefully unprepared for the onslaught. The goblins showed no mercy. They slashed at anyone in their path, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of destruction. Screams filled the air as villagers tried to flee, their feet stumbling over one another in desperation. A small boy, no older than 7, ran barefoot through the dirt, tears streaking his face. He glanced back once, just once, to see the goblin that had broken through the front door of his home. The creature's twisted grin filled his nightmares for years to come. The central square of Himnes became a battleground. The village guard, though small in number, attempted to rally, raising their swords and shields against the tide of goblins. But it was futile. The goblins were too many, too wild. They overwhelmed the guards with sheer numbers, swarming them like locusts. Blades clashed in the firelight, but the goblins' savagery was unmatched. In the chaos, families were torn apart. Fathers fought desperately to protect their children, mothers shielding their young with their bodies. Some fought back, while others ran, their screams swallowed by the roaring flames. The goblins spared no one. Not the elderly, not the innocent, not even the livestock. It was a feast of terror, a night of blood and fire, where morality meant nothing and survival was all that mattered. But it wasn't just the death and destruction that made the raid so horrific. It was what came after. The goblins didn't stop at looting and burning. They sought something darker, something vile. There were reports whispered in the days after the raid of brutal assaults on the women unlucky enough to be caught. The goblins, driven by their own base desires, took what they wanted in ways that left the survivors broken, their spirits shattered as much as their bodies. As the raid continued, the village descended into hell. Entire homes were turned to ash, and bodies lay strewn across the cobblestone streets. Smoke and blood filled the air. The once familiar village was left a war-torn ruin,